By the beginning of October 1942, the Germans have taken over 90% of Stalingrad city, and the territory taken grows meter by meter as the next 6 weeks roll along. It doesn't seem like the Soviets can possibly hold out. It seems like only a matter of time until the city on the Volga falls, and yet, not only are they holding out, they are preparing a huge counteroffensive, Operation Uranus. I'm Indy Neidell. This is a World War II special episode about the planning for the Soviet counterstrike at Stalingrad. It is already on September 13th that Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky proposed the counteroffensive to Joseph Stalin. This is the day that the battle for Stalingrad city really begins. The suburbs have fallen. We did an extra regular episode that day about the 3 conferences that would decide the immediate future of the city. You should check it out if you have not already. I am aware that there are claims the counteroffensive was being planned or at least discussed earlier in August. Zhukov himself, however, nixes that and says the earlier discussions were about stopping the enemy before he reached the city, not a plan to defeat and destroy him, which are the operational goals of what will become Operation Uranus, to isolate the main forces that are actually attacking within the city and then destroy them. This is to be achieved by hitting the flanks held by the Romanian troops. You gotta understand, right? The Axis thrust to Stalingrad does look worse and worse for them in terms of defense. Army Group B has the German 6th Army and 4th Panzer Army attacking the city itself. But the 4th Romanian Army on the right and the 3rd Romanian Army, the 8th Italian Army, and 2nd Hungarian Army on the left are stretched out over 700 kilometers in a gigantic salient with its tip in Stalingrad. So if the Soviets can keep the powerful German spearheads in the city, keep them attacking the city while building up a force for a counterstrike, and that would involve the 62nd and 64th Armies being live bait in the city and semi-suicidal diversionary attacks to both the immediate north and south of it, then when German troops went over to the defensive, they must do so with flanks only weakly held, with inadequate reserves and with their communications curving back to the west for hundreds of miles. Nor could the German command count on summoning fresh reserves from Germany or from other theaters. Equally, they would find it impossible to reinforce the southern wing with men moved from the western or northwestern sectors of the Soviet-German front. Zhukov thinks they can put together the force required for the counterstrike by November at the earliest. Now, the initial strategic plan would be a pincer attack by the right wing of the Stalingrad front and the left wing of what in September is still called the southeastern front against the Romanian-held flanks, and then an attack against the German armies from the rear. Zhukov and Vasilevsky leave Moscow to make inspection tours for planning. Zhukov goes to Stalingrad front headquarters and wonders what can be done from the Soviet bridgeheads on the River Don at Serafimovich and Kletskaya. At the former, the Red Army is on the south bank, 10 kilometers deep, so crossings to reinforce and move troops are out of range of German artillery, although there is no natural cover. The latter is different. Kletskaya is at the tip of a southern bulge in the river. He's also looking at the land between the Don and the Volga, where the northern Soviet diversionary September attacks come from. Vasilevsky is checking out the region south of the city where the 57th and 51st Armies hold. Now, south of Kuprosnoye and down to Lake Sarpa, they have a bridgehead like 12 kilometers long and 3 or so deep. From here, down to Tundotovo on the steppes, and up in the forests along the Don south from Serafimovich, the troops could concentrate and then smash the Romanians. Near the end of September, Zhukov and Vasilevsky go back to Moscow. There they meet with Stavka and the operations department of the General Staff to go over things like breakthrough sectors, lines of advance, and the manpower, armor, and aerial requirements. But what they really need to address first is the issue of the combined Stalingrad and Southeastern Front under Andrei Yeremenko. On the 28th, the Southeastern Front officially becomes the Stalingrad Front. The former Stalingrad Front becomes the Don Front and will be split in two eventually, with its right flank becoming the Southwestern Front. That last part is a secret though, and they won't announce the new front until the end of October. Konstantin Rokossovsky will command the Don Front, Yeremenko stays in charge of what is now the Stalingrad front, and Nikolai Vatutin will eventually move from the Voronezh front to command the southwestern front. This might sound confusing, but it is done to make easier the deployment of the actual strike forces and simplify the defense of the city itself. The plan, well, any counterattack plan, is ordered secret by Stalin. On September 29th, Zhukov takes Rokossovsky, who does not yet know of his appointment, down to Yerzovka and tells him about the counterattack in general. Rokossovsky thinks it sounds great, and within a few days is commanding his new front, with the orders that the diversionary attacks from north of the city to hopefully reach 62nd Army must not cease, which sobers him somewhat, since he's got 2 armies stretched out on the Don and 3 in the Don-Volga Isthmus. With the losses they've taken, he does not think any objectives are attainable, and furthermore, the Germans may turn around and attack him. At the beginning of October, Vasilevsky goes to Stalingrad headquarters and tells Yeremenko about the plans. But Stalin is clear that he, Yeremenko, is not to be part of the preparations, since he has his hands full just holding the city. Then Vasilevsky heads south to where 51st and 57 armies have been making limited test attacks against the Romanians to take the Lake District. They confirm that in those attacks, once the Romanians lose their artillery and take big casualties, they crumble. Those Soviet armies are still not told of the plans. And the plans, more specifically now, call for an attack from the Don to the south, and an attack from south of Stalingrad to the northwest to reach the Don River bend, and then the destruction of the 300,000 men of German 6th and 4th Panzer armies at the head of the Stalingrad salient. Vasilevsky meets Yeremenko again, who has no general objections to this, and who writes a paper with his thoughts. He will later claim that the counterstrike is his plan, dreamed up in August, and that he sends it to Stalin October 6. But this is almost certainly false in light of what's come before, and Vasilevsky's 2 visits to him in early October. Anyhow, Yeremenko's paper says the attack must break the enemy lines on the first day by no fewer than 40 kilometers. This size hole would be unpluggable, but it would require a mechanized corps to attack concentrically and not just straight on. The main attack should come from the north, but further to the northwest than initially proposed. This would have the dual advantages of trapping a larger force and also reducing resistance, since the German spearheads in the city could not get involved. Later in October, this becomes part of the official plan. The attack will come from southwest of Serafimovich, which means that the southwestern front replaces the Don front as the main attacker. The General Staff, already in September, estimates they'll need 900 tanks for this, but artillery is going to be at least as thorny an issue. The actual city fighting in Stalingrad consumes vast amounts of artillery, and it is the GAU, the main artillery administration, that must ensure the supply of guns and shells. And they have to maintain stocks at the city and also build them up for the counteroffensive and even outfit the fresh formations being raised. All the material comes to the Stalingrad front from GAU supply dumps and then onto the other fronts on their single railways under constant attack by the Luftwaffe. They also come down the Volga, which is mined. The GAU was also responsible for the supply of weapons. Machine guns and AA guns were in desperately short supply. In August, there were only 123 AA guns in the entire Stalingrad area. Throughout September and October, this was raised to over 1,000. 500,000 rifles, 80,000 automatic weapons, over 17,000 machine guns, 16,000 anti-tank rifles, and nearly 9,000 artillery pieces came from GAU depots to the Stalingrad front, in addition to over 1,000 Katyusha rocket launchers. On October 14th, civilians are cleared out of a 20-kilometer zone leading up to the Stalingrad front. Stavka's orders, and yes, civilians in October are still living in the city of Stalingrad, even in the parts that see the heaviest fighting. And in the cleared out zones, the Don and Stalingrad fronts are to build defense lines and fortify the villages. This is clever beyond just having more defenses in the rear. This is to convince the Germans that the Soviets only have defensive activity in mind, and the movement of fresh units into the fronts can be pretty well passed off as fortification. In late October, the plans become ever more concrete. The Southwestern Front will drive out from Serafimovich, crush the Romanian Third Army, and then head for Kalach. On day 3 of operations, it would link up with the Stalingrad Front, who will have fought out to meet them at Sovietsky. Parts of the right front of the Southwestern Front would head out to make an outer encirclement and secure the flank and the rear, heading for the Krivaya and Chir rivers. The Stalingrad Front will have fought out from the lakes to Sovietsky and will then attack the Germans from the rear with the other fronts. Parts of the Stalingrad Front left will make for Afganirovo and Kotelnikovo to flesh out the outer encirclement. The Don Front's job is just come from the north and destroy the enemy. Day 1 is scheduled for November 9th, and the Southwest and Don fronts will attack that day. The Stalingrad Front will attack the 10th. This is staggered so that they can get all 3 front spearheads to Kalach at the same time. So the Southwestern Front is the security blanket that is going to secure the encirclement. Vatutin takes his command on October 22nd. He's got the 63rd Army, which becomes the 1st Guards Army, the 5th Tank Army, the 21st Army, and the 17th Air Army above. These armies all come from other fronts. All October long, it's been filling out. The actual details of units and attacks we will see if and when the whole thing goes off, though. I say if and when because those dates of November 9th and 10th are becoming less and less practical as November gets going. Some of the armies are still short on ammunition, others on fuel, but they're moving to the jumping off points anyhow. Hiding the 5th Tank Army from the enemy as it does so is a real job, but it all seems to be sorted out. If you want to read the last-minute details of the meetings and everything, I've just been reading over them in John Ericsson's The Road to Stalingrad, and he goes in depth. However, the night before Operation Uranus is to begin, it is postponed for a week. Supply and troop movement issues have just been too great to get it going as scheduled. Now, I talk about what happens after that in the November 13th weekly episode, so I won't do that here. But I will talk about something tangentially related to the whole thing before I finish today. On October 9th, 1942, comes Order 307, the reestablishment of unitary command. By that I mean that commissars lose their military authority, which has been equal to that of the actual military commanders. All that authority is now in the hands of the commander, whether or not he is a member of the Communist Party. You can imagine how inefficient dual command has been, but it is a thing of the past. If the Red Army had to be restrained in retreat, at least it was not to be curbed in attack. The armored units are also freed from any infantry support assignments. They will now be used at full strength to break the enemy's tactical defenses and develop the offensive quickly in depth. On October 16th, Stalin issues Order 325, which outlines the future roles of armor and mechanized formations in the Red Army. So this is the situation on November 10th. I choose that day because the events of the 11th may change the entire situation, or they may not. But one thing at a time. Today was just a general look at the assembling of the Soviet counteroffensive, Operation Uranus. Friedrich Paulus is commander of German 6th Army, the main battering ram in Stalingrad. Even before the invasion of the Soviet Union, he ran a series of war games as to its feasibility, and I did a special on it last year, and you can check that out right here. We can make all of these specials like that and this thanks to the contributions of the Time Ghost Army. So join the army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.